Nahida, our cute little Dendro Archon's finally here. And if you've already got her by now, I'm sure you're very surprised at how good she actually is, just like I do. And for those of you who are still trying to get her, I do wish you good luck and I'm sure that you'll be getting her very soon. Now as usual on the channel guys, today we're going to be having a video diving in depth into Nahida's top team comps, because she can function in so many different teams, making it very fun to play. All of these teams have been personally tested by me in the Abyss, so I can guarantee you that it can perform really well. Now guys, if you're trying to get Nahida or any other character within patch 3.2 and you're feeling that you're stuck on Primogems, then in collaboration with Primogems Bargain, we're having a 6,480 Primogems pack giveaway right now on my Discord server, link in the description below guys. Hopefully this will give you a better chance of getting the character you want. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and join my Discord server to enter the giveaway right now. So with that, let's just jump into the video. So first off, we're going to be diving in the most important things you want to remember on Nahida before you go ahead and build her teams. And that first of all, you want to keep in mind the role that Nahida plays in your team. And so before Nahida actually arrived, we have predicted that she is going to be a sub DPS character on your account. However, upon having used her right now, she appears to be in a much more versatile role on every single team than just a sub DPS. Reason being that even though her E skill lasts for 25 seconds, every single time the mark enemies of your E skill has been killed, you have to have Nahida back on the field to reapply her E skill. And so therefore, and especially when you fight in a group situation enemies where, enemies are generally easier to kill, her rotation time is actually very short. Maybe you might even have to have her on field twice every rotation to make sure that you have Dendro reaction constantly being applied onto your enemies. And so the only time when she is actually a true sub DPS is when you're up against solo bosses or when you're up against enemies that are harder to kill, which is then you will have more time for your DPS character to focus on applying Dendro reaction damage with Nahida being off field. So this is going to be a very situational thing in terms of Nahida's role. As long as she's going to be staying on your team, you will want to find a way to best use Nahida in different situations during combat. Next is that a really good thing about Nahida is that she doesn't have internal cooldown into her E skill, therefore she will be performing exceptionally well in teams that have electro characters, because due to the ability of her burst shortening the interval in which she can trigger her E skill, she can make use of that really well. Now as far as Nahida's build goes, obviously you always want to have her EM as close to as 1000 as possible so that you can maximize the buff from her passive. But even though that is the case, you don't want to neglect on her crit ratio, especially her crit damage. For her crit rate, you want to get her to around 30% crit rate, because from her passive, if you have nearly 1000 EM, you should already be able to get at least around 22% crit rate bonus already. So that's already more than enough crit rate that she needs. And then the rest, you want to dump in as much crit damage as possible to enhance her damage. And as for Nahida's energy recharge, you don't actually need to invest into any, because she only have a 50 burst requirement, which is almost nothing, so she generally will be able to get it back up once every rotation without her needing to be on field too much. Artifact wise, her two best sets is obviously going to be Deep Wood and Gilded Dream. However, usually I tend to fall onto Deep Wood more, because Gilded Dream is only best when you have another character in your team that already have Deep Wood applied. Other than that, you would want Deep Wood personally on Nahida herself. However, that's not to say that Gilded Dream is bad. The best thing you want to do here in this situation is just use the set that you have better substats in. As far as the stats goes, if you're finding out you're lacking a lot in EM, then you want to go with EM Sands, EM Cups, and then crit ratio circlet. However, if you've already got enough EM, then you can go with a Dendro Cup. For Nahida's weapon, she actually have a lot of choices. If you didn't have the chance to get her main weapon, don't fret out, because her 4-star weapons are just really good. If you spend a little bit on the battle pass, you've got access to options such as Solo Pearl or the Wisith, and the Sacrificial Fragments are both really wonderful options that you can use. And of course, the absolute free to play option is going to be the Mapomera and even the Magic guide can be used as well. So those are some of the most important things you want to keep in mind before you build a team around Nahida. Now we'll move on to Nahida's best team. And then the very first team which I find to be the absolute best for Nahida is gonna be the Archon team. Oh my god, I swear this team is just so fantastic. I used this on stream and it literally blew the mind of every single person on stream, even myself, on how good every single character on the team synergizes with each other. Because this team has everything that a basic team actually needs, and it can even do better than that. First off, you have our Raiden Shogun and Nahida that complements really well with each other in order to do aggravate and spread. Both of these characters can do amazing damage, so it doesn't really matter who's going to be the triggering reaction. Next we have Zhongli, who is literally one of the best support we've got in the game right now. The team doesn't have a healer, therefore his shield's going to be here to protect us. Not to mention there's so many buffs he's able to give to the team, including resistance shred as well as tenacity that increase further Nahida and our Raiden Shogun's damage. And then Venti is here of course for further resistance shred with 4-piece Viridescent and his notoriously good crowd control. Not to mention if you have the elegy onto Venti, he's gonna be buffing your team even greater than he already is. So that was like the basic things that the team can do and what is to expect in a normal team. However, what's even better when using Raiden Shogun along with Nahida is the fact that Nahida can utilize Raiden's E skill very well. How Raiden E skill works is that as long as it is activated, once you deal damage to your enemies no matter how far they is, Raiden E skill is still going to be triggered. Therefore, first of all, even though Nahida is far away from her enemies, when holding down her E skill and activate it, she's still going to be able to trigger reaction along with Raiden's E. However, what's even better though is that especially in AoE situation, when your enemies is quite near to each other, even when Nahida is only doing damage to one enemy, Raiden's E skill is still going to be able to trigger across multiple enemies as well, doing an incredible chain reaction as you've seen here on the video. Therefore, it just feels so good when using this Archon team. And it's just fun as well because it is an Archon team with 4 Archon characters that we have up until now. The only main problem with this team though is that whenever you're up against shield, especially an electro shield, it might be a little bit hard to break. And the fact that this team cannot go up against enemies that ignore shield like the wolf. However, it's very limited up until this point, so you don't really have to worry about this really much. As far as rotation goes for this team, we actually don't have a too specific rotation. The only most important thing is that you want Raiden's E skill to cast right before everyone, and then after that you can just go towards Nahida's EQ, to Zhongli's E setup, to Venti's EQ, to Zhongli's Q, and then to Raiden's Q. However, sometimes before you actually get to Raiden's burst activation, Nahida's might have already killed most of her enemies, so you may want to go back to Nahida to reactivate her E skills and then to go into Raiden's burst. Next up, we have our Raiden Shogun, Nahida, Kokomi, and Dendro MC working ourselves in a Hyper Bloom team. This is generally will be her next best team's option. The main requirement for this team is actually you having Kokomi on your team. Otherwise, it's gonna be a little bit hard in terms of having a dedicated healer with very good application, or you might want to have to find another healer to replace on your team, but that many of the time will be a loss in damage and DPS. Before Nahida arrived, we were lacking a good support Dendro character to go along with our Dendro MC for Dendro Resonance. Now that she's here, we are in a lot better situation, helping your team have better EM from Dendro Resonance. And then another Electro character as a DPS, now you can have Raiden or Kuching or Sino, that's totally up to you, depending on which character you have already invested in the most. And then Kokomi is of course here for our healing, with a bit of damage buff from Thrilling Tales and of course a lot of hydro applications. Regarding this team rotation, you first start off with Raiden's E to Dendro MC's EQ, to Kokomi's E to Nahida's EQ, and then to Raiden's burst. Next, we have Nahida, Kuching, Kukishinobu, and Dendro MC or Kazuha. This is basically gonna be our focus on aggravates and spread team. Now you can of course have Dendro MC on the team here we've tested before, and then she does absolutely amazing. everything. However, then afterward we test out having Kazuha in the team, and surprisingly he does a lot better in place of Dendro MC from what the results have shown, mainly because Kazuha does so well in terms of crowd control, plus resistance shred as well as elemental damage bonus for the whole team. Therefore, especially once you're up against AoE situation, the team you're seeing here will generally have a better clear time. Now mainly the requirement when running in an aggravate spread team is that you tend to need Kuki Shinobu running on the team because we don't have a Dendro healer at this point in time. So Kuki Shinobu here will just have to be our healer and a sub DPS role. Therefore, you really want to invest a lot into your Kuki Shinobu's damage so that she's able to help your team a lot with off-field damage. Regarding your main electro DPS, you can of course switch between either Kuching, Raiden or Sino. As far as the rotation go for this team, it's gonna be Kuki's E to Kazuha's EQ to Nahida's EQ and then to Kuching's on field. Next, we have Nilou, Nahida, Dendro MC and Kokomi. Finally, Nilou's bountiful core team is complete. Having Nahida here is absolutely insane for Nilou's team, completing Nilou's team in the most perfect way possible. Now of course this is really limited in the fact that whether or not you have Nilou on your account. However, this is technically going to be the best Bloom team there is, because generally I don't recommend you running a pure Bloom team in other scenario, because Nilou bountiful core Bloom team is just so good that you don't want to consider any other Bloom team reactions. Generally, when you're running this team, I do recommend you to have Nilou as an on-field driver, because you're going to be doing a lot of bountiful core which hit yourself as well, and Nilou a lot of HP here will be able to tank it out. However, having Kokomi on field is still going to be a decently good option. If you're focusing on building EM onto your Kokomi, then she will generally be doing a lot more damage than your Nilou, since Nilou is already focusing on HP most of the time. As far as the rotation go for this team, we first start off with Nahida's EQ to Dendro MC's EQ to Kokomi's E and then to Nilou's EQ. Next, we have Ayato, Xiangling, Benny and Nahida, our Bersian team. Ayato is here to be our Hydro DPS character. You can technically swap out on any main Hydro DPS character you have like Child, and then having both Xiangling and Benny here for our Pyro Resonance as well as healing and damage buff for the whole team from Benny, and Xiangling will also benefit a lot from having Bennett on the team. Nahida here is of course for our Dendro Bersian reaction. Now this team is really fun to play, however from my experience it's a little bit harder to use than the rest of the other teams that we've discussed, probably mainly because we've already got better team options when running with this team, because normally we have Kazuha in place with Nahida before she arrived, and the team have always proved to do very well. So having Nahida here is kind of like a cost for not having resistance shred as well as bonus elemental damage and of course crowd control as well. However, if you want, this team will still perform absolutely amazing. Now as far as the rotation go for this team, we first start off with Nahida's EQ to Ayato's burst to Benny's EQ to Xiangling's EQ and then back to Ayato's E activation. So those are going to be the main top 5 teams that we have with Nahida. However, we still have some other honorable mention that I want to talk about, but this is more of going to be a fun team to play because their performance is just far behind from the best teams that we have discussed above. First off, it's going to be Nahida's Burning team featuring Nahida's Dendro MC, Xiangling and Benny. This team will actually focus on Nahida being a DPS character because we have 2 Pyro character here buffing her E skill damage to the maximum level after having Castle Burst, and then Dendro MC here to help us more with Dendro Resonance. However, from the fact that Burning Reaction just does so little damage, it's just actually just fun seeing your whole enemies on field being burned alive. That's basically it. Otherwise, most of the time Burning Reaction is just going to be there to sustain your Pyro element, in which this is actually going to be good in some of the melt team that you want to use. Therefore, another honorable team mention that we can have is going to be Ganyu, Zhongli, Nahida and Benny, in which Nahida and Benny here is going to be helping you with Burning Reaction to sustain Pyro element, helping Ganyu doing a lot of melt, and basically it is quite easier in terms of melt reaction than any of her previous teams. And then Zhongli here is of course going to be helping Ganyu with shield, because without shield Ganyu is pretty much having a huge DPS gets lost. However, again, this team is just here for fun to play because this is just by far Ganyu's most optimal team. Usually her most optimal team is going to be having her running with Shanhua, and so since this team doesn't generally give her that option, you might want to run other team along with Ganyu. So guys, those are going to be some of Nahida's best team option. I hope that it have been enjoyable and valuable to you. I know that there are so many different Nahida's team out there that we can build, so comment down below if you are planning to run a different team with Nahida. Once again guys, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to not miss out on our current giveaway that is going on. And with that, I wish you a super day and I will catch you on my next video.